to Future Proof. I'm here with Steve Ralph, who is the founder of the Epic Impact Society and the Epic Summits, and also the Epic Impact Projects, which are part of what brings us to this conversation today. Future Proof and Isaacson Works has been recognized and supported by Epic as its 2026 Impact Project. And I'm here with one of our students, John Felix Shaw, who is a filmmaker and an experienced designer, and taking part in these conversations with creative leaders. So thank you for the support that you're giving us for these conversations.
Absolutely.
Maybe start off by telling us a little bit about the Epic Impact Projects and what that was built to help support for Epic as an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Epic has our 4 pillars, and the Epic Impact Project's definitely one of them. And, when we created the nonprofit, we were like, well, how can we, we do our summits, we do the interviews, we do the awards, but I really wanted something where we had an outlet to give back to the community and interesting projects, so it wouldn't be cookie cutter. And so we started out, for example, in Skid Row, where we did creative problem solving workshop, and then we did United Way, and tackling the issue of homelessness, and for examples. And when you brought this project up, what I really loved is the fact it's investing in the next generation of creatives. How can we as Epic be part of that project to help this next generation think differently? And so this giving away aspect of the Epic Impact Projects is what excites me, and I love the mission of what you're doing with this project.
Oh, thank you very much. I mean, in terms of looking at the challenges and the opportunities that the next generation of creatives have, I mean, what really stands out to you in terms of, I know that you really focus on disruption as both a challenge and opportunity. I mean, what do you see headed in our way that we want to be preparing our next generation of creatives for?
Well, yeah, with the landscape of constant disruption, I think the human aspect is critical, the human element. You have AI, you have robots, and a lot of different arenas now, but the human aspect of imagination that is truly human. And so my encouragement and what I try to facilitate through different avenues is for people to really embrace that. Like, AI is a great tool, no doubt, but exercising our own creative thinking skills, tapping in and leaning in more into our imagination, that's going to be the differentiator, and the human connection. I mean, it's, we look at creativity and people say creativity thrives on collaboration. Great, but there's something that you get when you're person to person, like even sitting here, like there's a dynamic there you can't capture on Zoom or another platform. Small nuances, and those are kind of some of those golden moments where there's a moment of inspiration. Something somebody said, they move, and then they're like, oh, that reminds me of something. And it's really hard to capture that in the digital realm. So not, again, that balance, I think, is going to be key. So.
I mean, I guess one thing just to bring into this conversation, John Felix, I mean, does this resonate for you in terms of things that you and your friends are focused on? Do you see there being more interested in human connection, or is that just so last century and you just can't wait to get back onto your device at the moment this conversation's done?
I mean, it resonates for me 100%, and I think a lot of my life has been up to this point has been going to events, like going to concerts or festivals, and connecting with people. And I feel like I participate in the online digital spaces, and they have their value, but it's there's a quick dopamine hit or a fix that can happen, but it doesn't feel nourishing in the way that what you're talking about, those those moments that can only really happen in the dynamism and nuance of like being in front of someone and seeing all the nonverbal stuff, or actually just feeling their energy. yeah, so that part resonates for sure. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, one thing that I wonder about, and to be candid, I worry about, when we look at, kind of the impact of a few different waves that hit the shore of the students that I work with. It's not just AI, it's not just social media, it's not just the pandemic, it's not just the shift towards online learning, but it is all of those things kind of arriving at a similar time. What is it that you, from your perspective of someone who really studies all of these things, see as the things that really help to support human connection and the vitality of the nuance and the presence and connection that you're talking about?
Yeah, so EPIC's an acronym. So it stands for Experiential Learning, Pause, Ingenuity, and Community Engagement. So the P part, the pause, right? That's really what it is. And, and I think that's kind of what we try to do in our summits. So it's unplugged for 3 days. So we ask people, would you be willing to take the disconnect pledge, no devices for 3 days? And it actually happened as an experiment, because in my doctoral program, that's what I researched, and looking at creative leadership, creative training, and the world of information overload. And so when we had our first summit, that was one of the questions I put in the registration. Would you be willing to unplug for 3 days? And I thought maybe 50% would want to. Turns out 100% of the people that were coming said, I want to unplug. I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. So then I went to the workshop leaders, and we had about 20, and I said, here's who's coming. Would you be willing to do it completely unplugged? And everybody committed. And when I got the survey results back at the end of the summit, that was one of the top things that people talked about. They said, you know what, having this unplugged commitment, I was more present in the conversations. I went deeper in the conversations. I wasn't distracted with the material and what I was learning. And I realized, it's not going to go away. And I see the pendulum swinging the other direction. If you look at some of the survey results coming out, some of the data, especially with the younger generation, people are wanting more experiences in person. And I think any organization, any industry needs to pay attention to that, because, I've seen some research out there that what's going to differentiate organizations and projects are the ones that have more of the experience. More of the human connection. So that's what I encourage people, is to pause and reflect and figure out that digital balance. Again, not to be anti-digital, but what is it, for you? When do you experience information overload? When do you need to step away? Because we constantly have to ask ourselves that. I mean, if you look at the brain, like the neocortex was where our creative thinking happens. And then we have our brainstem, which is our fight, flight, and freeze. So when we have too much information coming at us, we actually downshift from the neocortex to the brainstem. So we're not able to make major life decisions, or we shouldn't. And then we're not going to be in the best place for creative thinking. And so just kind of helping people understand, what, everybody's different. So we just need to know when that space is to step away.
That's so resonant for me. I mean, I really come to my education practice as a creator, and so it ends up I think really influencing how I teach and what I feel is important to teach. And I think that more and more I feel like it's less and less important what it is that I teach in terms of the content that I am attempting to download. I feel like there's so much focus on kind of specific test scores, and I feel like if education becomes this job of seeing how many acorns you can sort of stuff into their squirrel mouth, like it just seems like an inhuman way to learn, and their brains are already full.
Right.
And so I almost feel like class time should be a class time where you actually aren't asked to accommodate a new bit or bite into your head, but can be invited into a space that is open enough to invite presence. And I think I also tend to explore the experiential aspect by coming up with projects that will put people in contact with people. And oftentimes, it's with fairly high stakes, like this project that we're doing. I mean, this is not a comfortable situation. I mean, it's exciting, putting people like emerging creatives, in the same room with creative leaders, but it's experiential. It's kind of like, oh my goodness, here we go.
Right.
So I just feel like that's part of what school needs to do. It needs to do something besides supply facts, because you've got all the facts in the palm of your hand. How is it that we train and mentor and support the ability to do something with those facts? I mean, set aside for the moment that, like, I'm a teacher. Just let's talk to us about education. Does that resonate for you in terms of what it is that you need from education, or not?
I mean, I come from, I went to Waldorf school growing up, and so it's a very hands-on approach to learning, and it's really a bit about creating a sense of reverence and wonder in the world. And so I actually feel quite blessed in, the approach that I was given to learning, and I I have a love for learning, but I do experience a lot of fact stuffing, and I think it's really interesting your point about, like, we now have a device that we can pretty much pull up any data point that's available quickly. And so it's like, well, where does that leave learning? And I think, like you're talking about, going into high stakes situations where there's discomfort or like growth that needs to happen, or, like, I mean, essentially facing fear, right? And finding a relationship to courage, and I mean, those are certainly the things in my life that have helped me to stretch and grow and become a better creative, or a more confident creative. And so I think that's a great point. Yeah.
Cool. Well, let me know, what we can do and how we make it better. I mean, in terms of the epic mission and really looking at this question of how we support the next generation of creatives, what is it that you think we need to do to really support them, and how does that align with what you're doing with Epic and your mission?
Well, this whole project, I would say, is the blueprint for that, right? It's really having opportunities for the next generation to connect with people from other generations at different levels of areas that the students are interested in going in, and facilitating that. I think that is huge, right? And not having, because the thing is, we can, like, say, okay, 5 years from now, we're preparing, we have these classes you're going to take because you're going to get to this point in your career. But with the advancement of technology, we don't know if that point's going to be the same. So between now and then, the thing that will be consistent are the relationships you make. And so the fact that you're providing an opportunity for these students to do that, these relationships will be more of a connecting point than that job you're aiming for 5 years from now, because that may be different, but these connections are going to be gold. Right? Because they're going to be navigating these changes, and by the time you get to that point, you're still going to be tethered and connected to a network. And I think that is the differentiating factor. And I worry for programs and universities where they have these, it's like everything is built towards, here's that career point, but they're not fostering the networks that you guys are building through projects like this. Because how frustrating would that be? Is you're spending four years for a position that may not be there, and you're not having opportunities to make those networks or those connections along the way. So,
does that resonate for you, John?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I don't want to negate, like, the value of technical learning, and I have a certain love for systems and, like, being methodical. And I think you can get into a meditation with that, and that can be really valuable, like practicing your craft is, leads to mastery, I think. And so, I feel like I know a lot of people, and sometimes it's helpful, and sometimes it doesn't feel as helpful. You know, it's like I think there is a mix. But goodness, I can't think of the question that I had in my mind just a moment ago.
It's okay.
No worries. I mean, I think what I'm appreciating about what you're saying and what you're saying is that, you know, there is a desire for system, you know, for a plan, for a practice that you can fully engage in, and there is a disruption. I feel like part of the challenge that I see is one of discernment. How is it that we understand, you know, what is now and forever different, and what is now and forever part of the continuity of how we navigate this world. You know, what do we double down on? What do we let go? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, there's certain things and certain skill sets that I think are critical. Having a flexible mindset, learning creative problem-solving skills, basic human interpersonal kind of communication skills and fostering those. That's going to be essential no matter what the world looks like in 5 years. So that's, I think, going to be highly valuable. The technical, being up to date with that, you know, with all the changes in technology, it's been said that, you know, with the growth of exponential technology, which is basically referring to the pace of change, we also have to get in that mindset of thinking that way. So looking at what's coming around the corner in your industry and going, okay, if that comes into place, how's that going to affect this, this, and this? And kind of playing out scenarios so you're not the disrupted, but you're actually part of being a disruptor and navigating the changes. So I think it's a few of those dynamics. Yeah.
That's really resonant. I mean, looking at kind of the E of EPIC in terms of experiential learning, one thing that I really appreciated about the workshop that you did with our students was, you know, you asked them a question about, you know, essentially what does creative leadership mean to you? And the way in which you invited them to answer that question was in some ways disruptive. You said, choose an image which, you know, answers that. You know, that engagement with the senses and, you know, the tactile or kinesthetic intelligence of, you know, asking students to create a model of themselves or a model of, you know, what they need to be a creative leader or to lead themselves in a creative practice. Talk a little bit more about how engaging with our senses and the role of experiential learning is something that helps us tap into our genius. Just what are your thoughts about that in terms of some of the approaches that you bring to this challenge?
Yeah, I think I've committed myself to approach things that way because I look back in my educational journey and the professors or the teachers throughout my entire schooling, the ones that stood out to me that I remember are the ones that did something different like that, where they used different tools and methodologies. It stood out. It was disruptive. It was not the typical. And the thing that I've really grown to really see, both in teaching and then also experiencing, is that we all learn differently. And so often, no matter, it's globally, you know, the way the education system typically is, it's auditory. You listen to somebody lecture, you write it out on an essay or whatever, type it out. And there's so many different other ways that people learn. And if we are more open to using a diverse array of methodologies and tools, you're going to capture people. And so that's kind of how I think, in my opinion, that education should approach, like have, as an instructor, have different approaches to different topics. And you're going to find that you're going to have a more engaged group of students because you're going to be able to tap into these different areas that people really prefer to learn instead of forcing one way on everybody. So that's it's from my personal reflection and going through these things. I'm like, you know what? I wish I had more of that. So I'm going to try this in whatever avenue I can. So, And I think, if you look at just what I love about using Lego, for example, it's a combination of kinesthetic, auditory, and visual, right? So you have all of that in just that exercise. That's why you typically, whenever I do that, I get 100% engagement.
Yeah, I also feel like it engages like our story sense in a unique way too, because it becomes a personal object that we're asked to bring some sort of narration to, like tell me the story of this object.
Absolutely, yeah. It's huge on storytelling skills, yeah.
I think it's also interesting, when you just look too at like research that they have about like sense of happiness. There was some study, and what they did was they had 50,000 people to agree to receive a text, and they would say, what are you doing right now, and how are you feeling? And the overwhelming insight from that was people who were focused on where they were and what they were doing reported feeling happy. People who were not connected with where they were and what they were doing felt a sense of anxiousness or sadness. That it's that sense of when we are dislocated from the current moment, that I think we tend to go into that fight, flight, freeze type place, because it's almost like the cellular memory of our evolution is that if there is something happening here and now that we need to remove ourselves from it in our awareness, to dissociate, that's actually like a freeze type place. That's a place where you're not connected to the current moment, because the saber-toothed tiger is going to eat you, and your one chance is for it to believe that you're dead so it could eat you later. I kind of, it's really interesting for me to kind of think about the narrative that our body has of this present moment, and how we can get kind of wrapped up into a place that's really not healthy. And what I love about the methods that you bring forward are, it takes me into this moment where my hands are connected to my body, are connected to my brain, and I'm meaning making with tools and implements, and I'm here and now in this present moment. And my understanding is that that's part of what opens this up to creativity. I know it was a fairly roundabout set of connections, but it is something that speaks to me in terms of how it is that we rewild our intelligence and reground in the current moment, and just the wonder and the mystery of being these beings that get to walk through the world and connect with other people. I don't know. Is any of that make sense to you? I mean, it's really interesting, like from a Waldorf perspective, or from just like your own perspective as someone who's a learner in this school. How does any of that land for you?
I like it. I mean, I love it how you described the present moment as this portal, either into creatively participating in your life and environment, or if there's a dissociation, like maybe there's an anxiety around that, and how does that fit into our picture of technology, where we're sort of, our attention is kind of in this suspended digital realm in a lot of the time. And I think it's kind of a fascinating thought experiment there. And I guess like something that was coming up for me, Stephen, I'd like to ask you. I'm curious if you could share anything about, what great creative leadership looks like for you, and whether there's people that exemplify that, dare I ask, or like, I think it's a great like concept, or like, I like the idea of creative leadership and what that means. And I guess I'm curious if you could speak a little bit about what that means to you.
Yeah. Well, for me, what it means is somebody that, no matter what industry, so going cross industries, somebody that is able to help inspire people beyond their job description into something greater. And so that's a lot into, there's different theories of leadership. That goes into a lot of what's called transformational leadership. But creative leadership, the nuance there is a lot of times where transformational is about, like, it's more than the job description. You inspire the people that are working with you or for you to buy in more the vision of the project or the organization. Creative leadership is also the change element. So it's taking people in a direction, in somewhere new potentially. And so for me, it's always been, and that could be literally somewhere new or more in a thought process, in my opinion. And so for people that are in industries or in areas where they're helping people really lean into what if questions. What if we did this, like beyond what is normal or seems kind of left field? Because curiosity is a fuel for creativity. And so you can't get there unless you ask those kind of questions. And so for me, it goes, again, beyond any industry, but it's somebody that really inspires to go, you know what? Yeah, what if we did that? Like, think of the things that have been created and developed by those people that actually took the risk to do that and ask that question. And going back to what you were saying, it's like that safety, the fight, flight, freeze. No matter what project or what industry, if leaders, they have a responsibility to create a culture where people can feel safe to ask the what if. And when that's not there, people are not going to be willing to take the risk to ask or share new ideas. And so I feel like creative leadership has that responsibility of creating a culture where people feel safe to share ideas. And so I've seen that in a lot of different industries, but that always is something that I really admire. Yeah.
That's so resonant for me. I mean, I think that, part of the what if that I was following in terms of creating a student-run, faculty-mentored agency that's producing this project, iWorks, is I wanted students to know that they had a place at the table beyond simply being a student. Like, that's the assigned role. And I feel like there's so many years of conditioned experiences about what school is supposed to mean and what a teacher is supposed to mean, and that just seemed like a somewhat useless exercise in following instructions. And as I'll tell students, following instructions is no longer a job. It's just like, it isn't something that, like, it's an educational DNA that came out of the Industrial Revolution. But even if, like, you want to be a factory worker today, you better have creative problem solving skills.
Yeah.
You better understand technology. You better be creative in that space. So that's part of why I said it's about culture, because if you're going to remove a structure, then what fills its space? And I think there has to be a sense of creative culture that is solid enough that it can be believed in to allow people to take a risk. I'm curious if there's anything that you might share about how it is that you create that creative culture.
Well, it's a few things. I mean, when you look at research, the organizations or projects that had a leader exhibiting creative behaviors, typically that's a good indicator that everybody else feels the permission to also do that. And then some of those characteristics are risk-taking, understanding of creative problem solving, empowerment and those kind of things. So I think leading by example is key. And then also, you can't, the collaboration part, I think of stories of leaders that literally physically in their organizations will put the restrooms in a place where all the different departments, they have to bump into each other because they want, those kind of organic conversations to happen, because creativity thrives at the diversity, the intersection of different perspectives. So it's not just a one thing. It's really looking at holistically going from physical space to how we collaborate to, the type of model that I have as a leader. I think all those things play into a creative culture. Yeah, but it's very holistic.
That's great. I mean, one question I have is sort of looking forward, for you as a creative leader and leading Epic, where are you taking Epic next? What do we have to look forward to at the next Epic Summit?
Yeah, the next Epic Summit, our theme is collective exploration. And so we have such an interesting group of people from all around the world, different professions. And so for this one, I wanted to, instead of having one or two keynotes, I wanted to have it be a collective experience where we're going to hear from a lot of people from the Epic community. And I feel like everybody's really working on some really cool, interesting projects and areas. And that's one layer to it. The other is we're introducing labs. So these are going to be open for the 3 days. We have a play lab, the power of play. We have one on story and then we have one on creative problem solving. So those are going to be available. And really a major character in this whole experience is going to be the venue, because a lot of what I've seen in research is space matters. So instead of having a conference in a hotel ballroom with no windows, we're having it at a 3,000-acre ranch. And there's orange orchards, there's avocado orchards, there's cottages, there's placed trails for exploration. And so we're definitely going to be leaning into that pause element there. So it's going to be fun. So it's going to be all about fostering creative leadership, and we're going to do it in a very different way.
Wow. Well, it's always a privilege to be part of it. And thank you to Epic for the support that you're giving our student team to lean into these questions and find answers with you.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a true joy. So you guys are amazing. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.